Brendan, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks, Jim. How are you today?
Yeah, very well, very well. It's nice to talk. We had a conversation before with your previous Kickstarter that was a huge success. How are you feeling after all of that?
Yeah, great. It's really lovely. The game arrived. The sample game arrived at my house about a week ago. So it's quite a surreal thing to have like your first board game project just sort of sitting next to you. And yeah, we're delighted. We're in the kind of fulfillment stage of that now. And yeah, so it's sort of it comes in waves, the workload, but it's always it's always appreciated that you've got 1,250 people backing what you're doing. It's quite a compliment and it's exciting, so it's good.
Absolutely, especially for a first Kickstarter and for somebody like you who came into the industry having done something a little bit different. It must feel so good to know that people are basically backing the quality of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things that have helped us there. The first thing is that some of the design work and the marketing of the game has been absolutely fantastic, and I can't unfortunately take any credit for any of that at all. But we've had something like about a third of Kickstarter board games succeed. So when we were up against it. We also did it during the first wave of the pandemic, so we didn't know what was going to happen with that either. So we were absolutely delighted when it smashed through its funding goal.
Yeah, it's amazing. So like any good game developer, you are in fulfillment stage for your first Kickstarter and you've decided to start the second one. So tell me about Hit the Silk. How did this thing come about?
Hit the Silk actually is quite an old concept that was originally planned to be an escape room. That's my main business, is that we've been running an escape room in London for about 5 years now. And before we even opened that, we had this idea about this sort of dilemma at the end of a game where what if at the end of the escape room experience, only 4 of the 5 could escape? And we decided it was a little bit divisive actually within the context of an escape room, because it's a very cooperative event. It's a game where you all want to succeed together. And so this is another semi-cooperative game. I like that idea of like, what do we do if there's not enough to go around? And so we looked into it for a while as an escape room concept and then shut it down. And the idea kind of resurfaced again, probably about maybe just under a year ago now. And I went to bed one evening and just thought about, it could work within the kind of idea of having this inventory of cards and there's some sort of trading and things going on. And I kind of wrote that evening, about half an hour, just came to me just as inspiration. Here's how it might work. And we developed sort of version 1 of the game then. And I was really, really happy with it. So we started playing it on Zoom with sort of family. And I was kind of conducting it as a kind of games master because we couldn't actually physically pass cards at that point in time. And it seemed to be getting a good reaction. So we kind of developed it from there.
Amazing. In terms of having this as a concept born as an idea that initially was for an escape room, but you felt wouldn't quite work, and so you turned it into a board game. I can't imagine there's many people out there in the world who have that sort of thought process, the dual idea of, well, I run a board game business and I run a escape room business. I'd imagine, therefore, this is incredibly unique, right?
Yeah, I think so in some senses. I mean, Hit the Silk doesn't have any kind of like puzzle content, and I think for me that where escape rooms and board games can overlap for me as a creator is all about what's the scenario, who am I, where am I, and what have I got to do, and that kind of sets the premise for the game, whatever the game is going to be. Whether it's going to be we need to go here and escape having solved these puzzles, or let's pretend we're here, but we're gathered around the board and we're kind of like it's almost role playing. So that's for me, it doesn't feel unnatural. It just feels like, we get to just play that idea somewhere else. So it hasn't felt too jerky for me.
That's amazing. I mean, that's the thing I'm saying is it's for you, it's natural, but I just can't imagine anyone else in the world has that opportunity. That's a really wonderful thing that you can come up with these cool ideas and then you think, okay, is this best suited for a real world escape room environment, or is it more suited for a tabletop board game environment? That's amazing. I mean, and another thing that's quite unique about this, we'll come on to the mechanics of the game a little bit more, is I haven't seen a board game with a component like this before. It's just such a cool way to measure the time. This essentially it measures the timer of the game, but also it triggers lots of other events as you play. It's just such a great idea, and it really thematically works well as well, because it kind of pulls you into it. That you've got this lockbox here as well. There are some hidden cards you can get into, and it sort of pulls you into the plane. You feel like you're in the plane because it's just a very aesthetically a pleasing piece. How did the idea for this come up?
Well, so in its infancy, Hit the Silk was purely a card game, and we felt that there was more we could do with it. And again, I have to give credit elsewhere here. My wife, Kerry, thought about the altimeter, and she actually kind of wanted to have something where you track the altitude across from left to right, and I to sort of show the planes coming down. I was like, that's going to end up with a very, very long board. So is there a different way we can look at that? And so the idea of the altimeter acting as a timer was brought in. I like it because the players are kind of in control of it as well. Time doesn't just move forward by itself. It's you move the time forward, but at a cost.
Yeah.
So that's really fun. In the escape room world, we think about timers quite a lot because that's an integral part of the game. And so I've seen a few different interesting timers in that arena. So we've seen one at an escape room in Guildford called it's called Venus, I think it's called. It's about like an artificial intelligence system. And the way that the timer is, instead of having a 60-minute timer in the game, they've got kind of cities in the world that are gradually being infected, and lights come on for each at a time, and you have a sense of, oh, it's getting more urgent. And that's what I like about the altimeter too. It's like the plane's still dropping, you haven't got long, you've got to get the money, you've got to get safe. So I think it really plays into the theme nicely.
Yeah, it works really well. So talking about the theme, when I first played this, so this is just for everyone's awareness, this is a prototype copy that Brendan's kindly sent for us to have a look at and give some feedback on. And one of the questions I asked was thematically, why are these people in a plane? Why are they there trying to find the money and trying to get a parachute, but there's not enough parachutes? And you kindly sent me through the backstory that's going to come with the game. I wonder if you'd kindly sort of talk us through that now, because I was captivated by the story. It was such a cool idea.
Yeah, so one of the chaps I work with at Escape Plan is called Sam Humphreys. He's a Canadian chap, and he helps us sort of bring alive the backstories of the game. We kind of tell him the scenario, and he kind of fleshes it out with the idea. So I probably won't do this justice because I haven't written it myself. But the story starts in Las Vegas, and you are trying to swindle a casino by playing a trick on them, and they catch you, and they bring you into the back room, and you try and get out of it, but they kind of insist that you need to pay back this debt that you owe them. And instead of doing that by kind of conventional means, they put you on this plane with a group of other people in a similar situation who owe the casino money. So you're all there. You need to work together to bring back it's a heist on a plane. So you need to bring back as a team the 100,000. Anything you get on top of that, you can keep for yourself. But if the ground hits and you haven't got 100,000, you're as good as dead anyway. Yeah. So the threat to your life is there either way. You don't get the parachute, you don't get to jump out, or you land with not enough money, and it's game over that way.
The pilot and co-pilot jump out, and they take obviously each parachute each. But I think it's the co-pilot, he takes the second parachute just so that he messes with the rest of the people on the plane, and then he fires a gun at the engine. Is that right? As he falls. So then
that's correct. Yeah.
You're then left on the plane with basically playing a game of musical chairs. There's one less parachute than there are people, and the plane's coming down because it's been shot in the engine. And as soon as you said, so I played the game I think 4 or 5 times before you sent that, and I really really liked it. But like I said, I was unsure why I was on the plane, and I really play thematically when I play games, so I needed to know that. When you sent that story and then I played it again, it was just so much better, because I then really felt the urgency, because previously I didn't know the plane was coming down. I was like, well, we'll just fly this plane then. Whereas now I know the plane's coming down. Now I know there's definitely not enough parachutes for everybody. It just creates this real sense of urgency. It was a bit like that escape room feeling from when I've done that transform to a ball game. It was brilliant. You must feel really proud that you're able to take those feelings that you have in an escape room that are so strong and transport them into a ball game.
Yeah, I mean, we're still sort of feeling our way with this a bit. We know our escape room kind of customers really well, having made 3 or 4 games, and we've made 1 board game, and we don't know how important theme, scenario, immersion is. We want to include it. We want it to be a thing. And I can see for people like yourself that's you really do kind of immerse yourself in that storyline. But I'm also conscious that there are some people, like there are in an escape room, who just come in and say, we want to just play the game. We want to enjoy the mechanics of the game and everything else. So it's important for us to know that, because when we market the product, we're able to sort of like, accent these things that are more exciting to different people. And actually, haven't done a great deal of talking about the scenario with anyone. It's kind of, we've been just talking like, in our development heads, we've been talking about the mechanics and like, what if we try this, what if we do that? We're very curious and questioning about the game. But it's really great to hear your understanding of it, which is completely right. It's about the co-pilot has taken an extra parachute and he's left you up a creek without a paddle by shooting the engine. So that's the kind of sets like a slightly kind of playful introduction to the game.
Yeah, when I read that bit, I was like, brilliant. I love this. I'm absolutely locked into this game now. One of the other mechanics in the game that I really loved was you have this, which is basically a place to put your cards. I always like that in card games when there's just extra bits. So it just feels like you aren't just playing a card game. It adds a board to it. So this is where you place your discard. This is your draw, and this is laundry, which we won't get into now, but it's basically pointless cards that fill up your hand. But the thing I like about this is in the game, you're essentially trying to get the money and a parachute so that at the point when you have to hit the sill, jump out and use your parachute, you're going to be all right. But as we've said, there's not enough parachutes for everybody. But there is also the opportunity to try and land this damaged plane, at which point you flip this over and then there's this cool little plane miniature that just moves along and you roll the dice and it's moving either horizontally or down. I love this. How did this idea come about?
Okay, so after we made Stop the Train, my daughter, who was 6 at the time, was inspired to begin making her own game. So she's getting her pens and pencils out and she's crafted this game. And she said, Daddy, you've got to land the plane. I was like, okay, that's an interesting idea. And then actually kind of said, well, how do we do that? And then she had some mechanic ideas and we played with those and said, well, what about if we bring some dice into that? And so we played a game actually, which was called Land the Plane, which she probably devised about half of, where you've got two planes coming in from different angles, crossing and trying to land on runways the other side. So not only have you got to land it, you've got to avoid the other plane. And the mechanic is the same. You're rolling two dice, one controlling the horizontal movement, one controlling the vertical movement. And that was really fun. So the reason we decided to put it in Hit the Sill was, it works in that environment. But partly because sometimes the game can get quite aggressive with with certain groups of players. So if you've got 4 people and only 3 of them having a parachute, one person might end up feeling just a little bit victimized. So we thought we'll have something just to take the edge of that if there's any sour feeling, just to give them a shot in the dark at the end of trying to land the plane themselves. So now it's great because it gives you a little twist to the tail at the end. If you've been left high and dry without a parachute, you have a chance now, even if it's a 20% chance, to land the plane and actually walk away with more cash than everybody else. So that's really fun, and it's actually quite a new thing. We only introduced it maybe about a month ago, so kind of just an ending for the game. We always like to feel that the game has the right ending. I'm a bit disappointed sometimes when a game is like, and we just tally up the scores. And they're fine, and actually the gameplay before them has been brilliant. I think you do it in things like Quacks and Quedlinburg and Ticket to Ride, and they're all kind of fun, great games. And I'm always a bit like, and we'll just see who's won at the end. And it doesn't really sort of fit the theme of the game. I've got suggestions for those games, but I'm not going to talk about those now. So.
I know exactly what you mean. I love that all those games you just mentioned. I love, but I agree 100%. You get to the end, and it's just like, oh, okay. And also, the counting of the scores takes a while. So by the time it's done, the rest of the players are sort of walking away from the table, and they've taken themselves out of this world. So I completely agree. And I feel like this is kind of what we're talking about with you bringing the experiences of doing the escape rooms and understanding how a human being will walk into that, think at the start, feel throughout, feel at the end. You're doing the same for board games. I don't think many board game designers think about that actual beginning, middle, end story process when they translate to board games. I feel like you kind of come onto something here that is really giving you an opportunity to understand the mentality better so that you create a better experience.
Yeah, I think when we first launched escape rooms, there was this whole kind of like excitement of having done it and got out at the end. And I think that, especially if you were close to the end of the 60-minute timer. But as the industry began to develop, we began to see teams kind of like excelling and doing, evolving and playing games better, escaping in 40 minutes. And then at the end of the game, they would just escape, and they'd be like, oh, is that it, kind of feeling. And so we knew that the endings of the game had to actually develop a bit more for the better players. Those who are getting that adrenaline rush of, I'm in the last 5 minutes, am I going to do it or not? That was kind of missing for them because they were so adept at the puzzles. And so we had to think about, okay, well, how do we end our games in a better way? And we've done that in our escape rooms, and I guess it's just an inherent part of my design process now.
Well, it definitely works. I mean, I haven't done many escape rooms, but the first one I did was in Washington, and it ended where you've been going through all these different rooms. You move through countries. You go from America to Africa. It's phenomenal. And then the last room, you escape. You're basically like a CIA agent. You escape with this helicopter picking you up just before these terrorists start shooting you with their machine guns. And there's this noise and wind, and there's a light shining down to make it really feel like there's this helicopter there. And then the lights come up and it goes, congratulations, you can pick. And I'm like, no, I need to get the helicopter. I was totally lost in it. And I felt the same when I played this game. So I think I said to you on the email, when we played it and we realized that there was this option to land the plane on the back, what we found is instead of as a group, our family all chasing the money and the parachutes, we were chasing the money and the pilot's license, which gives you a better opportunity to land the plane. You can try and land the plane without that. It just gives you a better chance, just because everybody wanted to try and land the plane, because this mini game at the end was so fun. And we were very competitive as we played the game proper, but in this bit, whoever was rolling, all the others were really cheering them on and hoping that they were going to land. But most of the time we did crash into the mountain here at the end, but it was still a great climactic ending to the experience. It was so fun, and I applaud you for that. So when's this game coming to Kickstarter? Tell us about the next stages for this.
Yeah, so it's pretty much 95% developed. It's sitting in houses across the UK and a few in Europe and America, getting feedback like such that you've given, which is really, really helpful for us. So I think there'll be a few tweaks still. We've identified one or two things we want to change. Kickstarter-wise, we've got a soft launch date of February. We want to make sure that Stop the Train is completely fulfilled and delivered before we start committing to like the next big thing. I think that builds confidence as well, rather than, hey, we're trying to do too much at once. So we're actually kind of quite ahead of the schedule on this one. We've managed to get the design work kind of sorted up front. It's a simpler game as well. It's simpler to Stop the Train to teach, to play. It's probably a touch shorter. So we feel like we're in a really good place with it, and it's I hope we get the support and get the chance to make a second game.
Very exciting. So with this in mind for February, I have to ask the question: what's the thoughts next? I know you originally had ideas for expansions for Stop the Train, or are there other things bubbling away in your head? What's 2021 look like for you beyond this Kickstarter that I'm sure is going to be a success?
Yeah, so I've read that a publisher should probably have 3 games a year to make it kind of a viable business model. Obviously, we've got other interests, so we're not sure. But we've got a lot of ideas for board games, and what's consistent about both Stop the Train and Hit the Silk is that they both come from just a flash of inspiration where it's really captured my imagination, and that's enough to fuel me to go and develop it. I've got another one which I've got a mechanic in mind, and I have an environment which I want to use it in, but every time I try and prototype it, it doesn't quite work. So we've got a lot of our game ideas. We're trying to keep it within the idea of escaping thematically, but not necessarily kind of puzzle wise. And we're trying to keep it 1940s where we can, but we may well stretch beyond that. I mean, Hit the Silk is 1930s, so we enjoy that era in history. Cool.
Well, I very much look forward to seeing what happens with that, and I can't wait for this to hit Kickstarter and to see the numbers fly through the roof, as I'm sure it will. It's such a fun game. We really enjoy playing it. It has been something that the 4 of us have really enjoyed. My 5-year-old daughter and 7-year-old son have really engaged with it. I know there's a lot of Take That to it, but I think with Take That, the key thing for me is that when you're delivering Take That, the person who receives it has the opportunity to take that back. As long as a Take That doesn't feel like, well, that's me done for the game then. That's very depressing. But this doesn't ever feel like that. It's more of a tug of war. It's just backwards and forwards at the key points in the game as the plane is getting lower and lower. Who can be in the best position when you have to make the decision, do we jump? So I just think it's a phenomenal piece of work. I think you've got this really unique insight to bring in ideas for how games work, and I applaud you for that. Brendan, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Thank you very much, Jim.